The alarm blared through the orbital station high above Earth. Captain Jake Morrison jumped from his chair in the command center and stared at the main screen. A ship had just appeared near the station without any warning. It was badly damaged, with holes torn through its silver hull and strange burn marks covering its surface. "Captain, the ship is requesting emergency docking," said Lieutenant Lisa Hayes from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel as she checked the readings. "It's an alien vessel. Thalaxian registry. They're not responding to standard protocols." Jake nodded. "Let them dock. Get medical teams ready." Jake nodded. 5 years had passed since humanity made first contact with the Galactic Coalition. Earth joined as the newest member. But most alien species treated humans like children who barely understood how the galaxy worked. The Coalition had thousands of member worlds, each more advanced than Earth in different ways. Humans were the newcomers, the primitive ones who still fought wars on their own planet. The damaged ship docked with a heavy clang. Jake rushed to the docking bay with Lisa and a security team. When the airlock opened, a tall figure stumbled out. Ambassador Velo was a Thalaxian, with blue skin and 4 arms. He usually moved with grace and dignity, but now he looked exhausted and frightened. "Captain Morrison," Velo said, his voice shaking. "I need to speak with Earth's leadership immediately. The galaxy is in terrible danger." Jake led Velo to a private meeting room. The ambassador collapsed into a chair and pulled up a holographic display. Images filled the air between them, showing peaceful worlds with cities and oceans. Then, the images changed. The same worlds appeared again, but now they were dark and dead. Nothing moved on their surfaces. 3 months ago, something emerged from dark space, Velo explained. "We call them the Swarm Collective. They appeared near the outer rim and began consuming everything in their path. 12 systems have gone silent. Billions of people are dead or missing." Lisa leaned forward. "What are they? What do they want?" "We don't know what they want. They don't communicate. They just consume." Velo pulled up more images. These showed strange ships that looked alive, with organic curves and pulsing surfaces. Their vessels are biological. They repair themselves. They reproduce using destroyed ships as raw material. Every ship we lose makes them stronger. Jake studied the images carefully. "What has the Coalition done to stop them?" Velo's expression darkened. "We sent our defense fleet to stop them at Nexar Prime. It was the largest military force the Coalition had assembled in 1,000 years. We had over 200 ships." He paused, his hands trembling. "The swarm destroyed them in less than 6 hours. We lost 40% of our fleet. The survivors retreated. 40% in 6 hours?" Jake felt his stomach tighten. "How is that possible?" "The Coalition was never designed for war," Velo said quietly. "We've had peace for thousands of years. Our ships are built for science and exploration. Our weapons are meant to defend against pirates and small threats. We have peacekeepers, not warriors. We forgot how to fight real wars." Lisa pulled up tactical data from the battle at Nexar Prime. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Coalition ships fired their weapons once, then retreated to recharge. The swarm ships absorbed the hits and kept coming. When Coalition vessels tried to maintain distance, the swarm surrounded them. It was a massacre. "The High Council is meeting now," Velo continued. "They're discussing evacuation plans. Which worlds to save, which to abandon. Most council members believe we cannot win this war." He looked directly at Jake. "That is why I came here. The council is officially requesting Earth's assistance." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Earth? Most of the Coalition thinks we're barely qualified to be members. They think we're too violent, too primitive." "Yes," Velo admitted. Many council members included Earth in this request only as a formality. High Counselor Thren believes humans are too inexperienced to make a real difference. "But I have studied your history, Captain. Your species never stopped fighting wars. You know things we have forgotten." Jake stood and walked to the window. Below, Earth turned slowly in space. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, billions of humans living their lives, not knowing that something in the dark was coming for them too. "When is the next council meeting?" Jake asked. "In 2 days, at Sanctuary Station. Lisa, get Admiral Stone on the line. Tell him we need to talk right now." Jake turned back to Velo. "Ambassador, Earth will attend that meeting, and we won't be discussing evacuation plans." 2 days later, Jake stood in the Coalition Council chamber on Sanctuary Station. The room was enormous, with representatives from dozens of species arranged in a circle. High Counselor Thren, a tall being with gray skin and large eyes, stood at the center. "We have reviewed all tactical data," Thren said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "The swarm cannot be stopped with our current forces. We must focus on evacuation, save as many lives as possible, and retreat to the inner systems. That is surrender," said a voice from across the chamber. Captain Zex, a Korthan warrior whose homeworld had already fallen, spoke with barely controlled anger. "My people fought. We died defending our world. And you want to just run?" "We are not running," Thren replied calmly. "We are being realistic. If we fight, we lose everything. If we evacuate, we save some." Jake stepped forward. "With respect, High Counselor, Earth has a different perspective." The chamber fell silent. Several council members looked surprised that the human was even speaking. "Captain Morrison," Thren said carefully, "Earth has 43 military vessels. The Coalition had 200, and lost 80 of them in a single battle. What difference can your small fleet make?" "Maybe none," Jake admitted. "But we won't know unless we try. Earth didn't come this far into space just to run away when things got hard." He pulled up the tactical data from Nexar Prime. "Your ships fired once and retreated. They never maintained sustained fire. They never coordinated attacks. With respect, you fought like scientists, not soldiers." "And you believe humans can do better?" Thren asked. "I know we can do different," Jake replied. "Earth's ships aren't built for exploration. They're built for combat. Our weapons are designed to keep firing. Our crews train for war, not peacekeeping. Give us a chance." Thren studied Jake for a long moment. "Very well, Captain. Earth's fleet will join the defense forces at the border systems, but understand, we expect you to follow Coalition tactical doctrine." Jake nodded, though he had no intention of following doctrine that led to defeat. "Thank you, High Counselor." The meeting ended, and Jake returned to his ship. Admiral Richard Stone was waiting for him via video link from Earth. "Admiral, recall all our ships," Jake said. "Every vessel that can fight. We're going to need all of them." Stone nodded. "The fleet is already assembling, Captain. We'll be ready to depart in." The human fleet traveled through space for 2 weeks. During that time, Dr. Kate Sullivan spent every hour studying the swarm. She examined tissue samples from destroyed swarm vessels that Coalition scientists had recovered. Her findings made everyone uneasy. "They're silicon-based life forms," Kate explained during a briefing. Her screen showed microscopic images of alien cells. "Not carbon like us. They consume organic matter for fuel and use it to reproduce. Every ship they destroy becomes material for new swarm vessels." Jake leaned forward. "How do we kill something that turns our losses into its victories?" "The Coalition used energy weapons," Kate replied. "Lasers, plasma beams. But silicon conducts energy well. The swarm just absorbed most of those attacks." She pulled up new data. "But silicon reacts badly to extreme heat. It crystallizes and becomes brittle." Ben Carter, the chief engineer, nodded slowly. "Thermal weapons. We could modify our missiles to carry thermite charges. Burn hot enough to crystallize their tissue." "Do it," Jake ordered. "Every ship in the fleet. I want those modifications ready before we reach the border." The fleet worked around the clock. Engineers welded new components into missile warheads. Weapon crews practiced loading procedures. Lisa Hayes ran simulation after simulation, trying to predict how the swarm would attack and how humans could counter. Finally, they reached Sanctuary Station. The massive structure floated in space, surrounded by dozens of smaller ships. But Jake noticed something wrong immediately. These weren't military vessels. They were civilian transports, packed with refugees. "Captain, we're receiving docking instructions," Lisa reported. "They want us to dock at the military section." Jake guided his ship toward the station. When he stepped into the docking bay, he saw hundreds of aliens from dozens of species. Families huddled together with whatever belongings they could carry. Children cried while parents tried to comfort them. These were people who had lost their homes to the swarm. A tall figure approached Jake. Captain Zix, the Korthan warrior from the council meeting, stopped in front of him. Zix stood over 7 feet tall, with armored skin and eyes that had seen too much death. "So the humans came," Zix said. His voice carried contempt. "Tell me, Captain Morrison, do you understand what you are facing? These are not pirates or rebels. The swarm does not negotiate. It does not retreat. It consumes everything." Jake met his gaze calmly. "We understand." 84. FLE1. Say low. FLE1. 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 "Do you?" Zix gestured toward the refugees. "My homeworld had a population of 3 billion. I watched from orbit as the swarm covered our cities. Within days, everything was gone. My family, my friends, my entire civilization, reduced to fuel for monsters." He stepped closer to Jake. "You should focus on evacuating civilians. Leave the fighting to those who know they cannot win." "We didn't travel this far to run supply lines," Jake replied. "We came here to fight." Zix stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked away. Over the next 3 days, human crews helped coordinate refugee movements while preparing for combat. Jake met with coalition commanders, but their conversations frustrated him. They talked about maintaining defensive formations, preserving ships, and minimizing losses. Nobody talked about winning. On the 4th day, the call came. A civilian convoy was moving through a nearby system, trying to reach Sanctuary Station. Long-range sensors detected swarm signatures approaching the convoy. "All coalition escorts are pulling back," the station commander reported. "Standard protocol. The convoy will try to outrun them." Jake looked at Lisa. "How many swarm ships?" 3 bio ships, she replied. "The convoy has 12 civilian transports and 4 coalition escort vessels." "Captain, the escorts are already retreating. How long until the swarm reaches the convoy?" 30 minutes at current speed." Jake made his decision. "Get our fleet moving. Full speed. We're going to intercept." "Captain," the station commander protested over the comm. "That violates tactical doctrine. You'll be outnumbered with no support. You should let the convoy scatter and hope some ships escape." "Not our way," Jake said simply. He cut the connection and turned to his crew. "Battle stations. All ships follow us in. We're putting ourselves between the swarm and those civilians." The human fleet accelerated toward the endangered convoy. As they approached, Jake saw the coalition escort ships retreating as predicted. The civilian transports were trying to scatter, but they were slow and couldn't outrun the swarm. 3 bioships emerged from an asteroid field. They looked like massive insects made of dark purple flesh and bone-white armor plates. Their surfaces pulsed with bioluminescence. They moved with terrible grace, closing the distance to the fleeing civilians. "All ships, attack formation Delta," Jake ordered. "Focus fire on the lead swarm vessel. Lisa, coordinate targeting." "Yes, sir," Lisa replied. Her fingers danced across her controls. "All ships report ready. Weapons hot. Target locked. Fire," Jake commanded. The human fleet opened fire all at once. Railguns launched solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. Missiles streaked through space, leaving trails of exhaust. Plasma torpedoes glowed like small stars as they raced toward the swarm. Kinetic weapons, simple but effective, added to the barrage. The lead swarm ship took the full force of the attack. Unlike coalition weapons that fired once and stopped, human weapons kept firing. The continuous barrage hammered the bioship from multiple angles. Its armor cracked. Pieces of organic material broke off and drifted in space. The swarm vessel tried to regenerate, but Lisa had anticipated this. "Second wave, fire," she ordered. Ben's modified thermite missiles struck the damaged areas. They detonated with brilliant white flames that burned at extreme temperatures. The silicon-based tissue of the swarm ship began to crystallize. Instead of healing, the damage spread like cracks in glass. The remaining two swarm ships changed course, moving to engage the human fleet. They abandoned the convoy and charged at Jake's vessels. "Good," Jake muttered. "That's what we wanted. Keep them focused on us. All ships, maintain fire. Don't let them get close." The battle turned into a violent exchange. The swarm ships fired biological projectiles that exploded with acidic compounds. Two human vessels took damage, their armor scarred by the attacks, but the human fleet didn't retreat. They kept moving, kept firing, never giving the swarm a chance to close the distance. Ben Carter's voice came over the comm. "Captain, I'm detecting a pattern. The swarm ships try to get close because their weapons work best at short range. If we maintain distance and keep hitting them, they can't adapt. All ships, keep your distance," Jake ordered. "Maintain current engagement range. Continuous fire on all targets." The human fleet worked together like parts of a machine. When one ship's weapons overheated, another moved to cover that firing arc. When a swarm vessel turned to attack a damaged ship, 3 others redirected fire to protect it. This was human warfare, developed through centuries of fighting each other. Coordination, adaptation, aggression. The second swarm ship shattered under concentrated fire. The thermite weapons worked even better than Kate predicted. The extreme heat caused massive structural failures throughout the bioship. It broke apart, pieces tumbling through space. The last swarm vessel tried to retreat, but Lisa had already predicted that. "All ships, pursuit course. Don't let it escape." The human fleet chased down the final bioship. It lasted another 5 minutes before succumbing to the relentless assault. When the last piece of swarm tissue crystallized and went dark, the battle was over. 20 minutes. 3 swarm vessels destroyed. 0 human ships lost, though 2 needed repairs. The refugee convoy stopped trying to scatter. They stared at their sensors in disbelief. The coalition escort ships, which had retreated to a safe distance, slowly returned. Jake's comm lit up with incoming messages. The civilian transports were thanking him. The coalition commanders wanted battle data. Ambassador Velo's voice came through, filled with hope. "Captain Morrison, you just achieved the first decisive victory against the swarm in 3 months. How did you do it?" "We fought," Jake replied simply. "We didn't retreat. We didn't minimize losses. We saw an enemy, and we destroyed it." Captain Zix appeared on the screen. The Korthan warrior's expression had changed. The contempt was gone, replaced by something like respect. "I owe you an apology, Captain. I thought humans were pretending to be warriors. I was wrong." "No apology needed," Jake said. "But we're not done. This was just 3 ships. The real fight is coming." As if to confirm his words, an urgent message arrived from Coalition High Command. Long-range sensors had detected a massive swarm fleet gathering. They were moving toward Thalax, the Coalition's capital world. If Thalax fell, the Coalition would collapse. "How many ships?" Jake asked. The journey to Thalax took 3 days. During that time, more human ships arrived from Earth. Admiral Richard Stone brought reinforcements, including vessels from different nations. The combined human fleet now counted 43 combat ships. It wasn't enough to match the swarm's numbers, but it was all Earth had to give. Jake stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the tactical display. Thalax appeared as a blue and green sphere on the screen. surrounded by orbital stations and defensive platforms. 17 coalition ships orbited the planet, all that remained of their once mighty defense fleet. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from High Counselor Thren," Lisa reported. The counselor's face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired and worried. "Captain Morrison, thank you for coming. I have reviewed the battle data from your engagement with the swarm. Your tactics were effective, but I must tell you the truth. What approaches Thalax is not 3 ships. It is over 60. Even with your fleet, I fear it will not be enough." "Maybe not," Jake admitted. "But we're here anyway. What defensive plans do you have in place?" Thren gestured to a holographic display. It showed the coalition ships arranged in a tight formation around Thalax. "Standard defensive doctrine. We maintain overlapping shield coverage and create a protective barrier around the planet. When the swarm attacks, we hold formation and retreat slowly toward the surface." Jake studied the formation and frowned. "That's a passive defense. You're waiting for them to hit you." "It is what we know," Thren replied. "Our ships work best in coordinated groups, supporting each other, and the swarm will surround you and tear you apart," Jake said bluntly. "They did it at Nexar Prime. They'll do it here." He pulled up his own tactical display. "I have a different idea. Your ships stay in formation around Thalax. They're the last line of defense. My fleet operates as strike groups. We hit the swarm before they reach your defensive line." Lisa added details to the display. "We split our forces into 6 groups. Each group attacks from a different vector. We keep the swarm spread out and confused. They can't form their net pattern if we're attacking from all sides." Thren looked uncertain. "This is very aggressive. You would be operating far from support, exposed to enemy fire." "That's what we do," Jake replied. "We take the risks so you can protect Thalax. If we fail, your ships are still in position to defend. But if we succeed, we might break them before they reach the planet." The counselor was quiet for a moment. "Very well, Captain. I trust your judgment. Coordinate with our fleet commanders. May fortune favor us all." Over the next 12 hours, human and coalition forces prepared for battle. Ben Carter worked with coalition engineers, teaching them how to install human weapon systems on their ships. It wouldn't make them as effective as purpose-built human warships, but it would help. Captain Zeeks requested permission to come aboard Jake's flagship. When he arrived, he brought an unusual request. "Captain Morrison, I wish to serve aboard your ship as an observer during the battle. My people were once great warriors, thousands of years ago. But we forgot those ways in the long peace. I want to remember what we lost. I want to learn how your species fights." Jake nodded. "Welcome aboard, Captain. You can observe from the command center." Zix took a position at the back of the room. He watched as the human crew prepared, noting how different they were from coalition forces. These humans didn't look scared. They looked focused, determined. They checked weapons, ran simulations, and talked about tactics like this was just another day at work. "Do your people not fear death?" Zeeks asked quietly. Lisa overheard and answered. "We fear it. But we fear failure more. Those people on Thalax are counting on us. We can't let them down just because we're scared." Zeeks nodded slowly, understanding something he had forgotten. The swarm arrived 18 hours later. They emerged from dark space in a massive formation, over 60 bioships moving together like a living organism. Their bioluminescence created an eerie purple glow against the black of space. Each ship was enormous, dwarfing even the largest human vessels. On Thalax below, billions of people looked up at their sky, knowing death was coming. "All strike groups, this is Morrison," Jake said over the fleet-wide channel. "Operation Hammer is active. Attack your designated targets. Keep them off balance. Make them chase you. Don't let them form up." "Strike Group 1, confirmed," came the first response. "Strike Group 2. Moving in," said another. All 6 human strike groups acknowledged and began their approach. They came at the swarm formation from different angles, spreading out wide before accelerating to attack speed. The swarm detected them and adjusted course, but human tactics confused them. Instead of one large fleet to surround, they faced multiple smaller threats attacking simultaneously. The swarm's formation began to fragment, as different bioships turned to engage different strike groups. "Now," Jake ordered. "All groups, open fire." Space filled with weapons fire. Railgun rounds crossed the distance in seconds. Missiles left contrails of exhaust as they streaked toward targets. Plasma torpedoes glowed with stored energy. The human fleet unleashed everything they had. The swarm bioships took the hits and began to respond. They fired biological projectiles and acid bursts. 2 human ships took damage immediately. Their armor scarred and melting in places, but they didn't retreat. They adjusted course and kept firing. "Strike Group 3 is engaging 4 bogies," Lisa reported, tracking multiple battles simultaneously. "Strike Group 5 reports 2 targets damaged. Group 2 has destroyed 1 swarm vessel." Jake watched the tactical display as the battle developed. The swarm was strong, but human tactics were working. By attacking from multiple directions, they prevented the swarm from using its favorite tactic of surrounding and overwhelming defenders. "Captain, 3 swarm ships are breaking through Strike Group 4's line," Lisa warned. "They're heading for Thalax. Coalition forces, 3 hostiles incoming," Jake transmitted. "Thren. They're your problem now." On the defensive line around Thalax, the coalition ships powered up their newly installed human weapons. When the 3 swarm vessels came into range, they opened fire. The weapons worked, but the coalition crews weren't as practiced. They hit their targets but didn't maintain the sustained fire that made human tactics so effective. "Strike Group 6, break off and support the coalition line," Jake ordered. "Keep those 3 busy." 6 human ships disengaged from their current targets and raced toward Thalax. They arrived just as the swarm vessels began to overwhelm the coalition defenses. The human ships hit the bioships from behind, catching them in a crossfire between coalition and human forces. All 3 swarm vessels were destroyed within minutes. The battle raged for 8 hours. It was brutal and exhausting. Human crews worked through pain and fear, loading weapons until their arms ached, repairing damage while under fire, making split-second decisions that meant life or death. 3 human ships took critical damage. Instead of retreating to safety, their captains made a final choice. They aimed their crippled vessels at wounded swarm ships and accelerated. At the last moment, escape pods launched, carrying the crews to safety. The ships themselves became weapons, ramming into bioships at tremendous speed. The impacts destroyed both human vessels and swarm targets. Zix watched from the command center, his eyes wide. "They sacrificed their ships to kill the enemy," he whispered. "Your species would rather die fighting than live in defeat." "We do what's necessary," Jake replied, his voice tight with emotion as he watched good ships die. "That's what it means to answer the call." Ben Carter's voice came through the comm, strained but determined. "Captain, I'm reading patterns in the swarm's behavior. They're adapting, getting better at predicting our attacks. But there's good news too. The thermite weapons are working even better at this scale. Once we crack their armor, the heat spreads through their whole structure." "All groups, focus fire," Jake ordered. "Pick targets and destroy them completely before moving to the next. Don't spread damage across multiple ships." The human fleet adjusted their tactics. Instead of engaging many targets at once, each strike group concentrated on destroying 1 swarm vessel at a time. It was slower, but more effective. One by one, bioships shattered under sustained assault. Lisa tracked the numbers. Enemy count dropping, 40 ships remaining, 35, 30. But the cost was high. 7 human vessels were destroyed. 11 more had heavy damage and were barely functional. Coalition ships had lost 4 of their 17. Thousands of people had died buying time for billions more on Thalax below. Finally, after 8 hours of continuous combat, the last swarm vessel broke apart. The bioluminescence faded from its hull as it died. Space around Thalax was filled with debris, both human and alien. Silence fell over the battlefield. Jake sat in his command chair, exhausted. Around him, his crew looked like they had aged years in a single day. But they had won. All ships, damage reports. Lisa said quietly. The reports came in. So many dead, so many wounded. Ships that would need months of repairs. But Thalax still lived. Billions of people were still alive, because humans had stood between them and oblivion. High Counselor Thren's face appeared on the screen. The usually composed leader had tears running down his face. Captain Morrison, I have no words sufficient to thank you. You saved us. You saved our world. We did what we came here to do, Jake replied simply. Across the coalition, celebrations began. Thalax had been saved. For the first time, a major swarm offensive had been completely defeated. Hope spread through coalition space like fire. But Dr. Kate Sullivan brought troubling news to Jake's ready room later that day. The Coalition High Council, met 3 days after the victory at Thalax. Representatives from dozens of worlds gathered, but the mood was not celebratory. Kate's discovery had spread through the government. Everyone now knew the truth. What they fought was just a small part of something much larger. Admiral Richard Stone had arrived with more Earth ships, bringing the human fleet to 90 vessels. Coalition engineers worked constantly, retrofitting their remaining ships with human weapons. But even with these preparations, everyone understood they were still outnumbered. High Counselor Thren stood at the center of the council chamber. We must face reality. The swarm has not been defeated. We won one battle, but the war continues. I propose we consolidate all forces to defend our core worlds. Build an impenetrable defensive line. Make them pay for every meter of space they take. Murmurs of agreement filled the chamber. It made sense to many. Retreat to strongholds and hold. Jake stood from his seat. High Counselor, that strategy is defeat in slow motion. The swarm can wait. They can reproduce. Eventually, they will overwhelm any static defense. We'll just be choosing where we die. Then what do you propose? Thren asked. We find the source and destroy it, Jake replied. Cut off the head. The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. Several council members protested immediately. One representative stood and said, That is madness. We barely survived defending Thalax. You want to attack deep into swarm territory? Kate stood and walked to the center display. It's not madness. It's our only option. She pulled up her analysis. The swarm operates as a distributed intelligence. But there's a central control point. I've been analyzing quantum communication signatures from destroyed bioships. They all receive commands from a single source. She showed the data flowing in one direction, like arrows pointing to a specific location. By triangulating signals from multiple battle sites, we've identified where those commands originate. Lisa added tactical data to the display. A three-dimensional map appeared, showing coalition space and the regions beyond. Deep in an area marked as the Velar Nebula, a red marker pulsed. The hive core, Kate said. That's where the controlling intelligence exists. Destroy it, and the swarm loses coordination. Individual bioships might still be dangerous, but they won't work together. We can handle them one at a time. Captain Zix, now formally representing his people in the council, spoke up. The Velar Nebula. I know that place. In ancient Korthan legends, we called it the Dead Zone. Our ancestors told stories of entire fleets vanishing there, thousands of years ago. We thought they were just myths. They weren't myths, Jake said. The swarm has been there all along. Dormant, waiting. Something woke it up. Thren studied the map. Even if this is true, the journey to the Velar Nebula would take us deep into swarm-controlled space. We would face constant attacks. Many ships would be lost before we even reached the target. That's why we're not taking all our forces, Admiral Stone said, stepping forward. A strike fleet. Fast, mobile, heavily armed. We punch through to the hive core and deliver a payload strong enough to destroy it. Ben Carter joined the presentation. I've been working on a special weapon, a thermic device, scaled up to massive proportions. If we can deploy it inside the hive core structure, the heat should cascade through the entire organism, crystallize it from the inside out. This is suicide, one council member said flatly. You are asking for volunteers to fly into the heart of enemy territory with almost no chance of survival. Yes, Jake agreed. I am. Because if we don't try, we're all dead anyway. At least this way, we die fighting for something. Thren looked around the chamber, seeing fear and resignation in many faces. I will not order anyone on this mission, but I will call for volunteers. Jake raised his hand immediately. Every human ship volunteers. Around the chamber, other hands slowly went up. Captain Zeeks raised his hand. The Korthon ships will join you. My people have nothing left to lose. If we die destroying the enemy that killed our world, that is a good death. More hands rose. 15 coalition vessels volunteered, their crews inspired by human determination. Very well, Thren said quietly. May the stars guide you. If you fail, the coalition will begin evacuation to distant galaxies. We will abandon everything we have built and run, but you, the volunteers, will be remembered as heroes. After the council meeting, Thren approached Jake privately. Captain Morrison, I need to tell you something. I did not believe in your species. When Velo proposed including Earth in our request for help, I thought it was pointless. I believed you would be too primitive to understand what we faced. He paused. I was wrong. You are not primitive. You are what we used to be, before we forgot how to be strong. Keep the coalition together, Jake replied. Give us 2 weeks. If we succeed, you'll get a signal. If you don't hear from us, then do what you have to do to survive. The strike fleet departed Thalax 3 days later. 40 human vessels and 15 coalition ships, including Captain Zeeks's flagship. They left behind the rest of the fleet to defend coalition space in case the swarm attacked while they were gone. Ben worked on his thermic device during the journey. It was enormous, filling an entire cargo bay. This thing should generate enough heat to crystallize a structure the size of a small moon, he explained. But there's a problem. It needs to be deployed inside the hive core's structure, not just near it. The outer layers would absorb too much energy. We need to get it deep inside. How do we do that? Jake asked. That's what I'm still figuring out, Ben admitted. The strike fleet entered the Velar Nebula after 2 weeks of travel. The nebula was dense with ionized gas that interfered with sensors. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. They navigated carefully, using Kate's quantum signature tracking to guide them toward the hive core. Swarm patrols found them on the 2nd day in the nebula. Bioships emerged from the gas clouds, attacking in small groups. The strike fleet fought running battles, never stopping, always pushing deeper. They lost 3 ships to these engagements, but they kept moving. The attacks are getting more organized, Lisa noted. They're adapting to our tactics faster than before. Kate checked her data. The quantum communication density is increasing. We're getting close to the source. The hive core is learning from every encounter. On the 3rd day in the nebula, sensors detected something massive ahead. The fleet slowed and approached carefully. When they finally saw it, everyone fell silent. The hive core floated in space like a nightmare made real. It was the size of a small moon, organic and pulsing with bioluminescence, that lit the surrounding nebula with purple and green light. Veins of dark tissue ran across its surface, throbbing as if pumping blood. Hundreds of swarm bioships surrounded it like antibodies protecting a vital organ. That's impossible, whispered one coalition officer. How can something that large be alive? Kate stared at the readings. It's not just alive. It's ancient. Based on the tissue aging patterns, this organism is at least 50,000 years old. Jake studied the defensive formation. We can't fight through all those ships. We need a different approach. Captain Zix stepped forward. A diversion. Coalition ships draw away as many defenders as possible. Human ships break through and deliver your weapon. That means certain death for the diversion force, Jake said. We know, Zix replied. But it is the only way. My people understand sacrifice. Let us make our final stand count for something. Jake looked at the Korthan captain and nodded slowly. Thank you. They spent 6 hours preparing. Ben finished the thermic device and loaded it aboard Jake's ship. Coalition vessels prepared for their final mission. Crews said goodbyes to family members via long-range communication. Everyone knew most of them would not survive. Before the attack began, Kate made one final discovery. She managed to intercept and partially decode some of the quantum communications. What she found horrified her. "Captain, the swarm isn't mindless," she said, her voice shaking. "It's conducting a harvest. Every few thousand years, it wakes up and consumes the galaxy's civilizations, breaking them down to base components. Then it goes dormant again. It sees itself as a gardener, pruning overgrown life. The Coalition's advanced technology triggered its harvest protocols. We're not fighting a mindless monster. We're fighting something that thinks it's maintaining balance. Does it matter?" Jake asked. Kate thought about it. "No. It still has to die. We can't negotiate with something that views us as weeds to be pulled." The attack began at dawn, by ship's time. Captain Zix led the Coalition volunteer fleet in a direct charge at the Hive Core's defensive perimeter. 15 ships accelerated to maximum speed, weapons blazing. They crashed into the swarm formations like a hammer. The swarm responded exactly as hoped. Bioships peeled away from the core to engage the attackers. Hundreds of vessels converged on the Coalition force. It became a slaughter. Coalition ships fought with desperate courage, destroying dozens of swarm vessels before being overwhelmed. But they created the opening. "Now," Jake ordered. "All human ships, attack formation. We're going straight through." The human fleet formed a spearhead with Jake's flagship at the point. They accelerated into the gap Zix had created, targeting the weakened defensive line. Swarm ships turned to stop them. But the Coalition volunteers kept fighting, holding the enemy's attention for precious seconds. Lisa coordinated the attack. "Enemy shields ahead. Heavy resistance. All ships, focus fire on Sector 7. The human fleet unleashed everything. The combined firepower tore through swarm defenses. Ships took damage, but they pushed forward. One escort exploded when a bioship rammed it. Another lost power and drifted away. But 3 human vessels broke through, reaching attack range of the Hive Core itself. Then the Hive Core revealed its own defenses. Massive tendrils, each thicker than a ship, extended from its surface. They moved with frightening speed, wrapping around one escort and crushing it instantly. Energy discharges, more powerful than anything seen from ordinary swarm vessels, lanced out and tore through another escort's hull. Jake's ship was alone, the last vessel within striking distance. Jake watched helplessly as Ben loaded the massive thermic device into a small transport. The engineer worked quickly, securing the weapon and checking its systems one final time. Through the command center windows, the Hive Core loomed like a mountain of living flesh, its tendrils still reaching for Jake's damaged ship. "All crew, this is Carter." Ben's voice came over the ship-wide channel. His tone was calm, almost peaceful. "It's been an honor serving with all of you. Tell my family I did something that mattered." The transport launched before anyone could respond. It accelerated away from the flagship, heading straight for the Hive Core. Swarm bioships detected the small craft and moved to intercept, but Lisa coordinated suppressing fire from the remaining human vessels, creating a corridor for Ben to fly through. The transport dodged incoming fire, weaving between energy discharges and biological projectiles. Ben flew like he was possessed, pushing the small craft beyond its design limits. A tendril swept toward him, but he rolled the transport at the last second, passing underneath by meters. "I'm approaching the primary structure," Ben reported. "I can see an opening. Looks like some kind of intake port." "Going in." Jake gripped his command chair, watching on the long-range sensors as the tiny transport disappeared into the massive Hive Core. Seconds passed like hours. The command center was silent except for the sound of distant weapons fire and the hum of damaged systems. "I'm inside." Ben's voice crackled with interference. "This place is incredible." It's like being inside a living cathedral. The walls are pulsing, and I can see veins carrying nutrients. Kate, you were right. This thing is ancient. Ben, deploy the device, Jake said, his voice tight. Working on it now. The thermic core is active. Setting the timer for 60 seconds. That should give you time to get clear. A pause. Captain, take care of the crew, and tell Earth, tell everyone, that we did it. We saved the galaxy. Ben, wait, Jake started to say, but the engineer cut the connection. 58 seconds later, the hive core exploded from within. It wasn't a violent explosion like a bomb. Instead, brilliant white light erupted from deep inside the structure. The light spread like fire through dry wood, following the veins and channels that ran through the entire organism. The extreme heat caused exactly what Kate predicted. The silicon-based tissue began to crystallize, turning from living matter into brittle glass. The crystallization spread faster and faster, racing through the hive core's structure. Within seconds, the entire surface changed from pulsing purple flesh to frozen crystal. The quantum communication signals stopped instantly. Across the galaxy, swarm vessels suddenly went silent. Some drifted aimlessly. Others attacked each other in confusion. A few simply shut down completely. Without the hive core's controlling intelligence, the distributed consciousness collapsed. The swarm died all at once, everywhere. The crystal structure of the hive core began to crack under its own weight. Fissures spread across its surface. Then, with a sound that traveled through space on quantum frequencies, the entire structure shattered. Pieces tumbled in all directions, each one frozen and dead. The few remaining swarm bioships around the core drifted without purpose. Human and coalition forces destroyed them easily. Within an hour, the battle was over. Jake sat in his command chair, staring at the drifting crystal fragments that used to be the galaxy's greatest threat. Around him, his crew celebrated. But he felt empty. Ben Carter was gone. So many others were gone. The victory tasted like ashes. Captain, Lisa said quietly, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Coalition forces report all swarm vessels are disabled or destroyed. We did it, sir. We won. Jake nodded slowly. Send a message to High Counselor Thren. Tell him the swarm is defeated. The galaxy is safe. He stood and looked at the crew around him. These people had followed him into hell and back. They deserved to know what their sacrifice meant. All hands, this is Captain Morrison. The hive core has been destroyed. The swarm is dead. We're going home. The journey back to Coalition space took 2 weeks. During that time, Jake wrote letters to the families of everyone who died. He found it harder than any battle. How do you tell a mother that her son died saving billions of people she would never meet? How do you explain that his sacrifice mattered? When the strike fleet finally emerged from the nebula, they found a massive reception waiting. Ships from dozens of coalition species surrounded them, broadcasting messages of gratitude and celebration. High Counselor Thren's flagship approached Jake's damaged vessel. Captain Morrison. Thren's voice was filled with emotion. You kept your promise. You gave us 2 weeks, and you returned victorious. The galaxy owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. Jake appeared on screen, looking exhausted and older than when he left. We did what needed to be done, Counselor. That's all. The strike fleet limped back to Thalax for repairs. The celebration there lasted 3 days. Billions of people took to the streets, thanking the warriors who saved their world. Monuments were planned. Holidays were declared. The coalition announced major reforms to their military structure, creating a real defense force trained by human advisors. Captain Zix did not return. His ship had been destroyed in the diversionary attack, along with most of the coalition volunteers. But before he died, he sent a final message that was broadcast across Corthan space. In it, he spoke of courage, sacrifice, and remembering what it meant to be warriors. His words inspired a renewal of Corthon culture, as his people began to reclaim the strength they had forgotten. Jake attended the memorial ceremony on Thalax. High Counselor Thren had ordered the construction of a massive monument in the capital city. It was a wall carved with the names of every person, human and alien, who died in the war against the swarm. At the very top, in letters larger than the others, was one name: Ben Carter. Beneath his name, an inscription read, "They answered the call." B. Ambassador Velo found Jake standing alone before the monument late one evening. The Thalaxian diplomat stood beside him in silence for a moment before speaking. "When I first came to Earth asking for help, I did not truly believe you could save us," Velo admitted. "The High Council included your world only because we had no other options. We thought you were too primitive, too violent, too different from us." "And now?" Jake asked. "Now I understand that those differences are exactly why you succeeded where we failed. We had forgotten how to fight. We had forgotten that sometimes the only answer to violence is greater violence. That sometimes the only way to protect life is to be willing to take it." Velo gestured to the memorial. "You reminded us of truths we had abandoned. When the galaxy cried for help, we expected words of comfort. Instead, humanity answered with firepower. And that made all the difference." Jake looked at the names on the wall. "So many dead. We didn't do it because we're violent. We did it because no one else could. Earth has fought enough wars to know that sometimes fighting is the only way to preserve peace." Dr. Kate Sullivan was offered a position heading a new xenobiology institute dedicated to identifying and preventing future threats like the swarm. She accepted, determined to make sure the galaxy would never again be caught unprepared. Lisa Hayes received a promotion to commander and became the chief instructor at the Coalition's new military academy. She would spend the next years teaching alien species how to fight, how to coordinate, how to win battles against superior forces. Her students would go on to defend the galaxy for generations. Admiral Richard Stone accepted command of the Joint Coalition Human Defense Fleet. Under his leadership, it would grow into a formidable force, ready to face any threat that emerged from dark space. Jake Morrison turned down every promotion and honor offered to him. Instead, he requested a simple transport back to Earth. He wanted to go home, to see his family, to walk on the planet he had fought so hard to protect. On his last day before departure, High Counselor Thren visited him privately. "Captain, are you certain you won't stay? The Coalition needs leaders like you." Jake shook his head. "The galaxy has enough leaders now. You don't need me anymore. Besides, I made promises to people back home. Time to keep them." Thren nodded in understanding. "Before you go, I want you to know something. The Council has passed a resolution. From this day forward, every Coalition species will be required to maintain a military force and train for defense. We will never again be helpless. We learned that lesson at a terrible cost, but we learned it." "Good," Jake replied. "The galaxy is a dangerous place. You need to be ready. We will be. Thanks to you, we know what it means to be ready." Thren extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. "Safe travels, Captain Morrison. May you find peace at home." The transport departed Thalax 3 days later. Jake sat by a window, watching the blue planet shrink as they accelerated toward Earth. Beside him on the seat was a datapad containing letters from families of the fallen, thanking him for bringing their loved ones meaning in death. One letter was from Ben Carter's mother. She wrote that Ben had always wanted to do something important, something that mattered. She thanked Jake for giving her son that chance. At the end, she wrote, "Tell Earth what he did. Tell them all what they did. Tell them all what they did." The transport crossed through Coalition space, passing dozens of worlds that were alive only because humans had been willing to fight. On each world, monuments were being built, naming human heroes. Children would grow up hearing stories of the day the galaxy nearly died, and how Earth saved it. Finally, after 3 weeks of travel, Earth appeared in the view screen. Jake felt something loosen in his chest. Home. He was going home. The transport landed in Washington, D.C., where a small ceremony was planned. Jake had insisted on keeping it small. He didn't want parades or speeches. He just wanted to go home. But when he stepped off the transport, he found thousands of people waiting. Families of the fallen, government officials, military personnel, and ordinary citizens who wanted to thank him. The crowd fell silent as he appeared. Jake walked to a podium where microphones waited. He looked out at the sea of faces, knowing that many of them had lost someone in the war. He thought about Ben Carter, Captain Zix, and all the others who would never come home. "We went to space 5 years ago hoping to find friends," Jake began. "What we found was a galaxy that had forgotten how to defend itself. When they asked for help, Earth answered, not with diplomacy or negotiations, but with the only thing that would work. We answered with firepower and the will to use it." He paused, looking at the families in the crowd. "We lost 41 ships. Thousands of people who will never see Earth again. They died in dark space, fighting an enemy most people will never even hear about. They died so that billions of others could live. Ben Carter was one of them. He flew a bomb into the heart of the enemy and detonated it manually because it was the only way to save everyone else. He knew he wouldn't survive. He did it anyway. That's what humanity means. That's who we are." Jake's voice strengthened. The galaxy learned something about Earth during this war. They learned that when everyone else runs, we stand. When everyone else surrenders, we fight. Not because we're better, but because someone has to, and we're willing to be that someone. The people we lost, they didn't die as soldiers or warriors, they died as protectors. Every single one of them could have stayed safe, could have let someone else take the risk, but they didn't. They went anyway. And because they did, the galaxy survives. He looked directly at the families of the fallen. Your loved ones were heroes. Not because they killed the enemy, but because they were willing to die so that others could live. That's the highest form of courage. That's what humanity gave to the galaxy. Jake stepped away from the podium. The crowd was silent for a moment, then applause began. It started slowly but grew until it was deafening. People cheered and cried, celebrating victory and mourning loss at the same time. Later, Jake stood at Arlington National Cemetery, where a special section had been designated for those who fell in the war. Each grave was marked with simple stone, bearing a name, rank, and the words, "They answered the call." Ben Carter's grave was there, even though his body would forever remain in the Velar Nebula. Jake knelt beside the stone marker and set down the medal High Counselor Thren had given him. "You were right, Ben," Jake said quietly. "You did something that mattered. Something that will matter for 1,000 years. The galaxy won't forget you. Earth won't forget you. I won't forget you." He stood and looked up at the sky. Somewhere, up there, beyond the clouds and atmosphere, the galaxy continued turning. Billions of people lived their lives, most of them never knowing how close they came to extinction. That was okay. That was the point. They were safe now. Jake turned and walked away from the cemetery. Behind him, the sun set over the graves of heroes. The galaxy had cried for help, and Earth had answered, not with words or promises, but with fire and blood and courage. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because when the call came again, and it would come again, humanity would answer the same way, with everything they had, holding nothing back, because that was what it meant to be human. The war was over. The galaxy was safe. And Earth had proven that sometimes, the only way to preserve life was to be willing to fight for it with everything you had. They had answered the call, and the galaxy would never be the same. "Ben, we need to deploy the device now," Jake said urgently. "I'm trying," Ben replied from engineering. "But the deployment mechanism is damaged. It won't release." Jake understood what that meant. They couldn't just drop the device near the core. They needed to get it inside the structure. And the delivery system was broken. "Then we do it manually," Ben said. He appeared on the command screen, already wearing a spacesuit. "I'll take a transport, Fly it into that opening in the core's surface and activate the device directly. Ben, you won't survive, Jake protested. I know, Ben replied calmly. But everyone else will. Captain, you got us here. You need to survive to get the crew home. This is my job. After home, before Jake could argue, Ben cut the connection and headed for the transport bay. Ed worried as she pulled up her analysis. Captain, I've been studying the battle data. Something doesn't add up. She showed him sensor readings. The quantum communication signals from these swarm ships suggest they were receiving commands from somewhere else. This wasn't the whole swarm. It was just a part of something much bigger. How much bigger? Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. Kate pulled up long-range sensor data. Far beyond Coalition space, in the dark regions where no ships traveled, something massive was moving. If my readings are correct, what we fought today was less than 20% of the total swarm mass. The rest is out there, gathering. This wasn't their main assault. It was a probe. They were testing us. Jake stared at the data, his brief moment of relief evaporating. How long until they come with everything? Based on their movement patterns, maybe 2 weeks, maybe less. Jake stood and looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, something ancient and terrible was preparing to consume everything. Today's victory suddenly felt very small. Get Admiral Stone on the line, Jake said. We need to tell Earth what's coming. The answer made everyone in the command center go quiet. Over 60 swarm bioships, the largest concentration ever seen, moving together toward the heart of Coalition space. Jake looked at his crew. Lisa was already running calculations. Ben was checking weapons inventory. Kate was analyzing the new sensor data. Set course for Thalax, Jake ordered. Maximum speed. Send a message to Admiral Stone. Tell him we need every ship Earth can send. Lisa looked up from her station. Captain, even with our full fleet, we'll be outnumbered 3-1. Then we'll just have to fight 3 times harder, Jake replied. He stood and looked at the star map showing Thalax's location. The galaxy asked for help. We answered. Now we're going to show them what humanity means when we say we won't surrender. The human fleet turned toward Thalax and accelerated into the darkness. 36 hours. Good. And Admiral, make sure everyone understands. We're not going out there to lose. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten Earth. The human fleet departed 2 days later. 43 ships, each one bristling with weapons. As they jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading toward the border where the swarm was advancing, Jake looked at his crew. Lisa sat at her tactical station, running simulations. Ben Carter, the chief engineer, checked weapon systems. Dr. Kate Sullivan reviewed what little data existed on the swarm's biology. Captain, Lisa said quietly, the odds are not in our favor. They never are, Jake replied. But the galaxy asked for help. And humanity doesn't know how to say no to that kind of call. The ship jumped into darkness, racing toward war.